Okay, here we are in Hatch version 3. The first step in digitizing a logo is to insert our artwork. So I'm going to click on our artwork button and go ahead and insert that logo. Now, the first step that I'm going to do is to go ahead and reset my artwork to my finished embroidery size. Now, we're going to be stitching this on a cap. So we're going to go to our measure tool, and we're going to use the M key on our keyboard. Now, this is one little important little note is when we're learning a software, I really feel like it's important to learn those common keyboard shortcuts that we're going to use all the time. So I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth to be using keyboard shortcuts and menus and toolbars and such. But if we can use the keyboard shortcut, ultimately that's going to make it that much quicker for us to switch between the tools here in Hatch. There is a really nice list available on the internet where if you just type in Hatch keyboard shortcuts, it'll pop up where it has all the various different keyboard shortcuts available in Hatch. One negative is that we're not able to define our own keyboard shortcuts, and I really wish we were able to do that, but perhaps that's something that will come in a later version. So we're in our measure tool, and all we have to do is click basically 2 points. So we're going to click at the topmost point of our design and then the bottommost point of our design. And you can see there our design is roughly 1.8 inches tall. So I went ahead and exited out of that tool, and we're going to go into our calculator. And so we're going to take the size that we want, 2.5, divided by the size that we have, which is 1.8, and that will give us a scale factor of 139%. So we're going to go ahead and close that, and then we have our artwork selected here, so we can come up here to 139%, and there we go. So now we should have a 2.5 inch piece of artwork. If I go back to my measure tool, the M key on our keyboard, and you can see that now we more or less have a 2.5 inch tall design. So we're making progress. Now, one thing I do want to point out, this is going to be a multi-part series here for the Pegasus. So this is Pegasus Part 1. There will be other, I'm going to kind of break this logo down into pieces for us. Okay, so so the next thing we probably should do is we're going to go ahead and switch over to our select tool. So there's two tools up here that we use all the time, and that's our select tool and the reshape tool. It's a little strange that the keyboard shortcuts for select is O and the reshape tool is H, which those two keyboard shortcuts to me personally don't make a lot of sense. But that's how we switch between those two tools, and we do that quite often when we're digitizing. So I have my graphic selected. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and lock my graphic. And again, this is where a keyboard shortcut comes in, which is the letter K, but I just want to show you if you go under the edit objects and then you can, or excuse me, under artwork, then you can lock it over here too. And notice that when we are using these various functions, see where it says lock and then it has K in parentheses. So that's telling us what that keyboard shortcut is. So we can kind of learn as we go. So I'll go ahead and hit K, and then now we cannot move our artwork. Okay. So now we go about the digitizing process. So I think where we're going to start here is we're going to start with the lower part of our Pegasus, and I think we're going to start right here at the tail. Now, what do we see here in this tail? I see two sharp, or actually three sharp corners. There's one there, and there's one there. And then I see all curved objects beyond that, okay? And so I'm going to show you how I would go about doing this. Now, I'm kind of coming at you with the approach that you've just downloaded this trial version, you don't know anything about Hatch, but you've got to get this stuck on a cap for a customer this afternoon, and you need immediate results. So yes, we're going to be learning about various tools here in Hatch and how to digitize, but we're not too concerned about doing it quote unquote the right way. We're gonna hack our way through this because we don't know the right tools. We don't know how to use the tools just yet. That's going to come in time. What we want to do is we want to be able to digitize a good looking logo for our customer, but we just don't have the digitizing skills just yet. So we'll hack our way through it, and I'm gonna try to take what I believe is the easy approach. But ultimately, you're going to have to download this trial version and really experiment yourself. But hopefully this video will help you get a little further along, a little bit easier. So we're going to go into the Digitize menu here, and we're going to digitize a closed shape. So we'll click on that. We have digitize an open shape, digitize closed shapes, and digitize blocks. Now there's other digitizing tools, but those are kind of the three main tools we use. So we're going to go to digitize closed shape. Now we could determine what kind of fill right here. We can go to Tommy, satin, raised satin, and so forth. So in this case, we're going to be using satin. And then we're just going to come in here. I like to zoom in a lot. So we're going to come in here, and there's basically two options. We can left click or we can right click. And so I'm going to try to explain what the differences are. So we're going to start right here at a point, and we're going to left click. Okay, now we've got a curve, don't we? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this difference basically, and I'm going to right click, and then we come to a point again. So that's where we left click. Always left click on a point. And then you could see what's happened here. The software has kind of automatically created that curve for us. Now, everywhere else is a curve until we get to the very end of the tail. So we're going to come over here and right click. And then I'm going to come down here. Now notice it's actually a straight line at this point. But if I right click, did you see what happened? Both of those curves kind of snapped to the artwork. And as you gain knowledge, I tell you what, let's back up. So if I clicked on a point that I didn't want, let's go ahead and back up. What if I drug this out like here and then came down here? See how that didn't follow the exact artwork? So as you gain knowledge, you'll kind of get a feel for how far you can move a node and still get the what you're looking for there. Now I am going to do one other thing for you, and I'm just going to show you. Well, what if I don't want to do that? So let me just show you. So I'm going to click a couple of points here. I'm going to left click. So even though we have a rounded object, I'm just going to left click and show you what we can do. This is kind of a more simplified version also. So if we just left click, left click, left click, what do we have here? We have a bunch of straight line segments. So now from the rest, I'm going to do it the right way. But I wanted to do this because I wanted to show you how easy it is to go back and fix those. Okay, so now we're kind of switch back over to right clicking here, and like I said, as you gain knowledge of exactly how the software functions, then you'll have a better idea of how many nodes you really need to place. So we're back here to the tip. We're going to make a sharp point. So we're left clicking, and then we're going to right click, 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 and back to here and left click. Okay, and we'll go ahead and hit enter. And so we get this result. Now I'm going to turn off my stitches, and this is something you're going to do a lot. So we're just hitting our S key. that will turn stitches on and off. And also True View. We can go to T, the letter T on our keyboard, and that will turn off the 3D view of the stitches, or we could just get rid of the stitches altogether. Okay, and that is also accessible right here. True View is accessible here. And then under the show menu, we could turn on shapes and stitches and artwork that way as well. So if we wanted to just look at the design without the artwork, we can do that, hitting the D key on our keyboard. So D, S, and T are some important keyboard shortcuts to remember. If you don't remember anything else, those are ones that we use all the time. So this is the artwork that we generated. Now, how do we fix this? Because this is not exactly what we need. So what we're going to do is go into the reshape function here. I'm going to force you to get used to using those keyboard shortcuts. So we're going to hit H, and that will take us into reshape. And you can see here we have these nodes that I placed, and so I could just move those nodes. Now, here, I can actually change those nodes. You see right now it's a square, and you see here these nodes as well. Now those are circles and they're turquoise, where the squares are yellow. You see that there? So if we want to take a square node and turn it to a curve, we just hit our space bar. And you see when we did that, how it just kind of snapped right into place. So here, where I deliberately just kind of clicked, we're just going to hit the space bar. Okay, so we click this node, space bar, and it turned it into a curve. And then this was the last one that was a straight line segment node, and we spaced that. And you can see, boom, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to actually change this back to a square node here, because I just want to show you one other thing. You can just come in here with this line, and you can just click. Left clicking will give us another straight line. So see, so now we've got this other straight line. Or I'm just going to go ahead and hit the delete key on my keyboard. Get rid of that. But if we right click, then we'll add a circle node, which is a curve node, and then we could just bend this at will. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and go back here, hit the space bar, and there you go. Now, let's turn on our stitches and True View and take a look at this mess. So you can see that is not very appealing. Now, there is an easy way to fix this. First of all, in satin stitches, there's a function here called auto split. Now, what's happening here is that the satin stitch is too long. And so the software is telling us the satin stitch is too long. It needs some intermediary needle points. And well, it doesn't look good that way. So if we turned off auto split, well, now you can see it looks much, much better. But that's really not the solution. So the solution for this is to add some stitch angles. So we're going to click on this function under the Digitize menu called Add Stitch Angles, and we will just add some stitch angles. This is telling the software what direction we want these stitches to go. And then hit the Enter key. And now you can see, now we can modify the stitch angles, and that will give us a nice little preview. But look at how nice that satin stitch looks now. See, that looks really nice. And there you go. So you can see there's nothing there that was incredibly complicated. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So now we can kind of move on. Now, we as our digitizers, we're the artists for the design, so we have to make some decisions on how we want this design to look when it's stitched out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of definition. So you can see here these two elements of the design. What are those elements? Well, those elements are the legs of the Pegasus. Okay, it's kind of rearing up and getting ready to take off and fly. And so, but that's representing two legs. But it's just one element at this point. It's just one piece. And so I would prefer to give this a little bit of definition so it actually looks like one leg is kind of in front of the other type thing, like it would actually be. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. So we're going to go and we're going to digitize closed shapes. And we're going to come in here, and again, this is just us being an artist. We're just determining what we want to do here. So I'm going to come in here, and I am going to digitize the first object that would kind of be in the background. So we're going to use the digitize closed shape, and we're just going to click, left click, because this is more, I feel like this is more or less straight stuff here. Okay, and go ahead and hit the enter key. And you can see here we have a nice satin. Now I don't mind the stitch angle here, but I think I will change it just a little bit, just because I can. And then you know what? Let's go add one more stitch angle. Okay, I kind of prefer it like that. Again, you know, that's just a minor detail, but I really do like that. So now, for our next element, we're going to design, digitize a closed shape, and I'm going to come up here, and I think I want to come up here a little bit. Again, this is just me kind of making it up as I go. So I am going to right click because I feel like that might be a little bit of a curve there. Okay. And more or less happy with that stitch angle. I do tend to like to straighten that stitch angle out just a little bit there. And you see, you know, again, it's very, very minor, but to me that just looks just a little bit better. Okay. Now this last little piece right up top here, I felt like this part was just the hoof, and this part is actually part of his leg. So that was just, you know, what I determined. So I'm going to go back to the digitize block or digitize closed shapes, and then we'll go ahead and I am going to overlap this a little bit. I'll show you why here momentarily. Okay. But I want this to be the tatami stitch. Let's see here. What do we want to do for stitch angle? Let's just try going this direction. See what that looks like. All right, I guess I'll go ahead and accept that. I think that'll be fine. Now, we do need to kind of resequence this because just, you know, while we're thinking about it, I actually want this to stitch before those two pieces. So we'll go here and we're just going to drag this up in the sequence. We'll fix the whole sequence later, but that's essentially what I want it to do. Now I think I'm going to just adjust this just a little bit. It's kind of hard, that little tiny piece is kind of hard to differentiate between the tatami and the satin, and that's okay. Now one thing that can help us define this a little bit, because we have because of the way the two are connected there, and this being such a tiny little piece, what we could do is just see what it would look like if we gave this a different stitch angle. So right now we have it going this way, but if we come in here and change that stitch angle, let me grab see if we change the stitch angle a little bit. There we go. Let's take a look at that. Now you can see just by making that small change, you're going to have, when this sews out, you'll see what I'm talking about. We're going to have a very defined space right there, you know. Now I not wild about this down here, so I am going to come back in and go ahead and add some stitch angles. So we've got that one, but I'm going to see if we can't just change this stitch angle a little bit. And you know, I'm not positive. I like that little pucker there. So you know, sometimes you have to play with this a little bit to get the ultimate results that we're looking for. I do want to try and get a little definition there, but I also want, there we go. I think actually that will give us enough definition between these two, and we'll really study that when we go to stitch this design out. Okay, so that takes care of that. And now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and take care of the body down here. And then we're going to do a satin stitch down here. But this is going to have a tatami fill. So really easy. We're going to click on our digitize closed shapes. And remember, we got to remember some rules here. So we're going to left click at the point. We are going to left click at the point. And then if it's a curve, what are we going to do? We're going to right click. So we're going to right click here. We're going to right click here. It's okay to add an extra node versus not adding an extra node. That will help us not have to go back and edit things. As your knowledge progresses, you'll know how far you can take it. So this is, while not a super sharp corner, it is a corner nonetheless. So we left click here. And then you can kind of see what we did. And yes, that is following our artwork, right? So we're going to right click here. I'm going to split the difference and then left click. And now you can see that artwork is following along real nicely. We're going to right click here, left click. And again, you see that's following our artwork real nice. So this is a straight line segment here, more or less. Tell you what, let's just add a little tiny curve. It's very minute, but that's okay. So left click here, and we're going to come all the way over, and then we're going to right click, right click, right click, right click, right click, right click, left click, right click, right click, and left click. We'll hit enter. Now we are in satin mode, but that's okay. We can switch that back over to tatami mode. And there we go. So I think that looks pretty good. Now we can modify our stitch angles and things later, but for right now, I'm pretty happy with that. So we're just gonna run with that. And then we're just gonna digitize this little guy. So we're gonna go to digitize closed shape. We're gonna go to left click. We're gonna right click. And we are gonna overlap this a little bit, just a little bit. So left click, right click, left click. So you can see how we copied all of that. And there you go. So now we have our satin. Now I do want to change my stitch angle just a little bit. So there we go. Okay, so now that piece is taken care of. So we're making good progress. So now what we have to do is we have to do this top part. Now this is where we're going to do a little bit of creative freedom, if you will, because what we're looking at is just one kind of solid thing, but we know that we have the horse's ear, we have, or I'd say the Pegasus ear, we have the Pegasus mane, and we also have the Pegasus horn. So we have three different elements there, but the way, and this is part of the back wing, so we have all these separate elements, but right now it's just one solid piece. So I, as the designer, I think I would like to have all those be separate pieces. So I'm just going to come in here and start digitizing. So we're going to go to the digitize closed shape. We're going to start with the horn. Right click because there's a slight curve there. We're going to left click. So there we go. And then we are going to go ahead and add our stitch angle. So I think that looks good. And then we'll digitize this little ear. So we'll go to digitize closed shape. It's okay to overlap just a little bit. We're going to right click, right click, left click, and back to the beginning. Okay, so I think that looks good. Yeah, I think that looks that's okay. We could play with the angle, the stitch angle, just a little bit, but I think that'll be fine. So then we have the horse's Pegasus mane. So we'll go back to the digitize closed shape, and we'll just come in here and just kind of make it up as we go along. So left click, and I think it's right about here. Right click, I think it's right about here. Right click, and I think it's here. Left click, right click, right click, right click, left click, right click, left click, right click, right click, left click. Okay, and we'll hit enter. Now, obviously, that's not looking very good, so we're going to click on Add Stitch Angle, change our stitch angle there, and there we go. That looks much better. Now, I do think I want the horse's mane to stitch, well, the little ear to stitch on top of the horse's mane and on top of, I don't know, yeah, I think so. We'll go ahead and leave it on top of our horn. All right, those are tiny little details that obviously we can change really easily. Okay, so now I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and lay down the boundary for the fill of the horse itself. So we'll go ahead and click on Digitize Closed Shapes. We'll come over here to Tatami, and we're going to left click because it's a corner, left click because it's a corner, and then we'll go ahead and right click, right click, right click, right click, right click, right click. Let's do here and then left click. Okay. Now you see that little oddity, if you will, there. We might want to go back and clean that up, but that's okay. We can, we've already talked about how we can clean that up. So we're going to right click, left click because we're coming to a point, and then right click, left click because we're at a point, right click, left click because we're at a point, right click. I'm going to go ahead and left click here because there's a tiny little point, and then right click, right click, right click. We're going to left click here, then right click, and then we're going to right click, right click, right click, right click, right click. I did kind of overlap that a little bit, but that's okay. That's what we want to do. You'll see why here a little bit later. And then down here, we're coming to a point, so we have to left click, and then right click, left click, or excuse me, yeah, left click, and then we're going to go left click, or let's go right click. There's a little bit of curve to that. Left click, and we'll go ahead and right click, and left click, and then right click, up here, left click, right click, and then because we're coming to a point, we need to left click again, and then of course we're going to come connect the two here. So we're going to come over here, left click, and then we'll go ahead and left click. We're going to right click and left click, and there you go. So we can go ahead and fill that in. Now you see in the let's go ahead and turn off stitches a moment. So if we look at the artwork, you can see if there's any little areas that we want to clean up, because we can now really clearly see the boundary. So you see, like right here, that's not exactly quote unquote right, but if we look at the stitches, you can't tell. We're zoomed in, how much? You know, over 1,000%. So while it doesn't technically look right to the original artwork, you're not going to see that in stitches. See the difference? Now, can we come in here and just pull that down, or we could delete that, whatever we wanted to do. Now you can see it more or less does match the artwork now, but if we look at stitches, does it really look any different than what we had? Not really. So we do want to look for areas that could be problematic, but if we look at our outline, we can more or less see. Pan, by the way, we use pan a lot. That is the P key on our keyboard. But yes, we can more or less see that the boundary is pretty dead on our artwork. And so I'm quite pleased with that. So let's go ahead and turn our stitches back on. Again, we might decide to mess with the stitch angle of our tatami fill, but for right now, we could just leave it the way it is. I think it looks just fine. So now let's see here. Right now we have the uh, fill of the horse stitching after we've placed all of these elements, and we don't actually want that. We would want that to stitch before those elements. So you come in here in the sequence, and we can move that up, and now you can see that's kind of tucked behind. So we have the our main fill, and then we have our horn and our mane, and then the ear. Okay, so that's all stitching the way we would want it to stitch. So now we just have these last two elements here for the wing. So we've already seen how we're going to do that. So we're going to click on Digitize Shape. I am going to overlap just a little bit. And then right click, left click, right click, left click, right click, left click, and left click. Enter. We're into Tommy, so we're going to switch back over to satin, and we're going to change our stitch angle just a little bit. I think that looks much better. Now, these little anomalies here, don't worry about that. While it doesn't look right here in the software, you won't notice that when we actually go to stitch that out. So don't be concerned. See, almost every piece has a little anomaly, but you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to show. So then we'll go ahead and stitch out this last little piece, and then we're going to right click, left click, right click, and left click. And again, we're still into Tommy, so I forgot to change it. So we'll go back to add stitch angle. And there we go. I like that stitch angle. We can move this down slightly. Okay. So things are coming along. I'm starting to like this logo. Now, there's one last piece of this logo that we're going to do in this video, and that's for the wings, right? But we're going to try and talk about a different tool, and I feel like this will give us a good opportunity to experiment with this tool. So you can see we can definitely get the job done with the digitized closed shape. Now, there's another function called digitize blocks, and I'll confess, I'm not very good with the digitized blocks yet. I don't really exactly understand entirely how best to use this tool, but I can show you, the basic things. It's kind of like digitized closed shapes, but it is different. So when I say it's kind of like digitized closed shape, it is in regards to there's two options. We can left click and right click for curves. That's one. But let me just go ahead and grab this tool, and we'll just take a look at digitizing this. So we do want satin stitches for these three elements. And we're going to come in here, and just like digitized closed shapes, we're going to left click because it's basically a straight line. And we're going to left click here. But now it's basically, see that rubber band? So it's saying that the next point has to be on this side, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and right click a point. And then over here, see how now we've got this band is kind of stretched over here? And we're going to left click because that's more or less straight. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to right click because there's a slight curve to that. And then we're going to left click. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to right click, and then we're going to left click. Okay, so we're creating this shape going back and forth, back and forth. Now here it is curved, so we're going to go ahead and right click down here, and then we're going to left click up here because it is more or less straight, and then we're going to right click here and left click here, and we're going to right click here and left click here, and then we're going to right click here. Let's go right here, and then left click, And I don't really quite exactly know what to do with our point except to go right to the top, and we're going to left click, and then you see we have that kind of rubber band effect, and then we're just going to go ahead and left click. Okay, and then that's it. So then we go ahead and hit enter, and there we have our satin stitch. Now you can see it's kind of a little bit weird up here, but that's okay. We'll add our stitch angles, and that will hopefully fix that. I tell you what, let's do this. Let's not do that. Let's go, let's remove all of our stitch angles, and now you can see that that tip looks a little bit better already. So now we're going to go in and add some stitch angles and really define that. I actually prefer that better. The reason it added those stitch angles that it did, I wonder if I should back up and show you that. Let me back up here. Let's see here if we can show you that. Well, you know what? That's okay. I backed up too far, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and this will give us good practice because I do want to show you this real quick. So we'll do this a little bit faster. You know, if you're digitizing for real, you know, this this doesn't take near as long. I'm trying to go slow and be methodical and explain exactly what I'm doing here a little bit better. So that's why I'm taking a little bit more time. Okay, so what I wanted to show you here is we go into the reshape tool, you see those points that we used when we clicked on the digitized blocks. Those points are also where my stitch angles are. Okay, so if I'm going to come in here and this is what I like to do. I just like to get rid of all the stitch angles. Say the heck with that, and then we'll go in and add stitch angles. But by default, the software is going to add all the stitch angles at those nodes that we placed. So we can just go and add whatever stitch angles we want. Let's take a look at that result, and you can see we have a nice sharp point and everything looks really nice. Okay, so we'll go ahead and use the Digitize Blocks tool for the rest of this. We're going to right click, we're going to right click, we're going to right click, right click, we are going to left click, right click, right click, right click, left click. Again, we're going to switch to our select tool. We're going to remove stitch angles. We're going to add stitch angles. Zoom out a little bit here. And there we go. That's taken care of. And then lastly, our last little piece here, left click, right click, right click. Because to me, there's just a slight curve there. So we're going to right click. Here, we're left clicking and then back to right clicking. And then we'll go ahead and right click. There might be a small curve there. And then we'll come up here, left click, and then we can right click. And then again, we'll switch to our select tool. We'll go ahead and remove our stitch angles. We'll add some new ones. And we'll take a look at our masterpiece here. So we're going to go ahead and turn off our artwork. And now you can kind of see what we've created up to this point. Okay? So that's going to be it for this portion of the logo. There's more to do here, obviously. We've got our lettering to take care of. We've got the little design element of our house we have to take care of. We still have to talk about sequencing and thread trims and all those things that are important. We're not going to really delve too much into underlays and pull compensation and push compensation in this particular video series. So up to this point, we're just going to use all of the software's defaults on all of the real nitty-gritty details. I just want to show you how this stitches out. And you know, I would really encourage you just to grab a logo and start playing. But you could see that there's nothing that I just showed you that is terribly complicated. And so it's pretty straightforward stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and more importantly, I hope you learned a little something, and maybe the intimidation factor is gone just a little bit for you. In our next video, we're going to finish this up. We're going to talk about lettering. We're going to add those little design elements there in our little house graphic there, and then we are going to be talking about the sequencing and thread trims. So that will be coming up in part 2.